I found that I did have really strong women throughout my life, my mother, my grandmother, and I had a lot of really supportive family and what I like to call chosen family who were around me, and they were always supporting me, and they were all really strong women in my life. I also saw a lot of people who didn't have those role models, and especially people younger than me, and I decided that I want to be that person for them because not having a role model is really challenging. I couldn't imagine my life without those women bringing me up and helping me. And I also really thought in the LGBTQI plus community, it's really hard when you're younger and to see those role models because they're not as obvious to youth. And I didn't know a single person in high school that had Canada, and that's why I chose to really be very open about being out, and I want to be really open and be a role model for those students who didn't really know what it was like, or they didn't know if they would get backlash or how people would react because they never seen anybody do it. So I want to be that person that people can look to and be like, she did it, she was fine, people still love her, people will still love me. So as the Youth Fabels Committee member, I have been really focused on helping youth and especially young women who are in the LGBTQI plus community. As being part of that community myself, it was really important to help other young women feel comfortable and safe in that community, and I wanted to create a safe space for them. So I ran an event called BODPAUSE. I did it through the help of the NT Youth Roundtable, and I spent a year planning this event. I saw a lot of women struggling with self-worth. They didn't feel like they were good enough, and they weren't confident in their own bodies. And I really wanted to change that, because I've always felt very confident in my body. I've always felt very comfortable, but I saw a lot of people around me who were absolutely beautiful, amazing young women and older women. And I really wanted to help them feel worth, and I really wanted to help them feel like they were worth it to others too. So what I did was I got everybody in a circle and I said, what do you love about yourself? And I think the scariest moment was when nobody came up with an answer. But throughout the night, we really worked on what we actually loved about ourselves, and I found out how many women don't think about the positive. They think about everything they want to change, but through that night, I really taught people, look at the things that you can care about and what you like and what's important to you, and develop those. Make those qualities shine out. Make sure everybody else sees them. And even if they don't see it at the time, they are completely worth it, and they're absolutely amazing people.
Well, what causes the disparities? Well, I think that workplaces are not silos from the broader societies around them. They're not isolated. And of course, the issues we see in our broader societies manifest in our workplaces too. They're essentially little microcosms of the world around them. And so if we think about the issues that we have in our society, the sort of things I think about broadly are things like racism and white supremacy, classism, lack of equal access to education, and of course, when we think about what the Working Women's Centre does, we think particularly around gender inequality. All of those things are broader issues are occurring in our workplaces too. So female-dominated industries are lower paid, so that makes me think of nurses and teachers and aged care. We've got a gender pay gap that's currently around 14% and has barely moved for 2 decades. Casual and insecure work. We've got male-dominated workforces with hardly any female representation. Again, for generations that has barely shifted. And so those are the sorts of things that make workplaces more challenging environments for women and for other vulnerable people. Current example of this is that the pandemic has really shown us some of the major issues in Australian workforces. We know that the care work during the pandemic has largely ended up with women. I think I have read that in Victoria, Victorian women are now the most unemployed in the country as a result of a 4-month lockdown. There's been heaps of media around people working in aged care and in security, which are low-paid jobs, heavily casualised. And then, of course, working multiple jobs in order to create a sense of security for themselves. And, of course, that has had the effect of spreading, of those people being more likely to spread disease, and that's been heavily, publicised in the media. And so that has really shown us, I think, what some of the major issues in the Australian workforce for women and for other vulnerable groups.
So I suppose I started boxing when I was very old, 38, and a lot of my family and friends asked me if I was going through a midlife crisis, and I said, yeah, probably. But it felt natural, and it was that was the first fight I had in 2019 at the Australian Masters, and nothing ever prepares you for the first time you step into the ring, but it was a great education that took 6 minutes. But it was fantastic. And it was also a challenge for me to get out of my comfort zone and just challenge myself to be in front of a lot of people, because I'm generally shy, but through boxing I feel like I'm focused. I have one goal if I get in the ring, and that's not to get hurt firstly, but to do my best and just box well and box my own way. Yeah, so since 2019 I've had 4 fights since then, and I think I'll still have a few more. We'll see how things go. So when I was growing up, not too many women had access to education, but luckily my family knew the importance of it. So all my siblings and I were encouraged to go to school and further as much as we could. I was fortunate enough to go to university. So when I got to university, I could see that a lot of women in my group would fall out so that they could put their partners through university, which I thought was sad. But it's through having an education that I had the opportunity to move to Australia as a skilled migrant. I don't think I would have had that opportunity otherwise. It helps me, I hope, show other people I meet, women or females or male, that anything's possible. Like, I grew up very poor, and through that all, we just persevered, knowing that education was our way out of poverty. So, like, in any situation, if I'm able to share my knowledge or share something I know with someone else who doesn't know that particular thing, I think it's empowering, not just for them, but for myself as well, because I'm empowering them to go further and do other things. That then just makes me feel happy, because I've just given them some bit of knowledge and they're able to go away and maybe share it with someone else. I think that's great when we can help one another in whatever way we can.
Okay, in 1972, my family and I moved to Alice Springs, and it was the best thing my parents ever did for me, was bring me here. It's an amazing place. When I began work, I was looking for work in the late 70s. I asked Conair if I could work as an air hostess, because I knew there was an airline here. They said I was too young, but they said, come back next year. And I came back when I was 18 and began flying on Herons almost immediately. We did several flights a day to the Rock. We did mail runs through the outback, through Ernabella, Armata, all of those places. Conair was a bush airline, and so we carried passengers and freight, and so you couldn't land after rain or you'd get bogged. The planes weren't without their challenges. There'd be the odd engine failure, but flying in the Herons and the DC-3s was also an experience that'll stay with me forever. In the Territory, you can do anything you put your mind to. If you say you want to do it and work at it, you can do it. I'm thinking of things that have helped me do things outside of a woman's field in the Territory. And the key thing I always come back to is learning how to drive a truck. In the 1980s, I was working at NT Fuels, the Shell fuel depot, which is on the bottom of Anzac Hill. And I was in the accounts section, but I loved seeing the trucks coming in and out, and I always wanted to go for a drive. And so I asked over drinks one Friday, could I learn to drive one of the trucks so that I could see what that felt like, because they were quite tall things. And they got me to learn how to roll a 44-gallon drum. They said if you're going to drive a fuel truck, you have to be able to do all of the things the guys do. So I learned how to roll a 44, and then I had to get a dangerous goods licence. So I passed my dangerous goods licence, and I understand I was the only one woman in the Alice at that time who had one. But anyway, after that, they put me in a brand new Mercedes-Benz with L plates, and we delivered fuel around town while I learned how to drive the truck. And it was a fantastic thing for them to let me do in a brand new multi-$1,000 vehicle at the time, and I was always appreciative.
We got up here about 41, I suppose, from Moonadata, that is. That's where I was born. We were just bush kids. Lived out in the open, good part of our lives. Having to start school a wee bit late, but I'd already gone to school at Moonadata. Then after our mother passing, we just left, and I'd have missed about 3 or 4 or 5 years of schooling, but it didn't take me long to pick it up. I was okay then. But after that, in my era, of course, there was no further studies for Aboriginal people. So there was just domestic work for us. Yeah, I was hired as a teacher demonstrator, if you like, in language. Two languages, which is of my 2 grandmothers. They're like chalk and cheese. One's Islander and the other one's Luritja. And of course I can speak both of them, but fluent in one note, because our father brought us up on our mother's language. He never ever spoke Islander to us, because he's Islander. Yeah, always said, no, your mother's language. Keep you on that. So he spoke that to us. Like bringing up your own child, then of course the grandchildren came after, see? And you help with them as well, by just guiding them to think that they've achieved all of their aims and goals that they've set. So that's what I'm proud of their achievements, really. Then we thought, I wonder who's the smartest out of the lot. But as far as I can see, I think they were all smart. But with her, she'd be coming up with all the distinctions. This one. Oh, you left Grandma in the dirt. Oh, way behind, rather. I often think to myself too, I said, oh goodness, yeah, if I'd had the education and all that sort of thing, yeah, I would like to be a linguist. Got my doctorate in that, because I like languages.